Before the story unfolds, he invites viewers to drop their location and local time in the comments, a way to anchor this wild tale in the ordinary rhythm of everyday life. He grips the wheel of his old pickup, the steering column rattling like a loose tambourine as the tires crunch over the dust-baked road, East Texas heat shimmering across the horizon. For 2 years, he has been gone, exiled by necessity, to the oil fields of Arizona, chasing day wages under an unforgiving sun, trying to stitch together the pieces of a life gutted by divorce. He had pictured this drive 100 times in his head, coming home to the ranch his family had held since the 1880s, the pastures wide and waiting, the farmhouse worn but steady, the ghosts of his grandfather's cattle still breathing through the tall grass. But cresting the ridge his breath catches, where cedar fence lines and windmills once marked Harper land, a massive wrought iron gate stands pompous as a Vegas casino, its arch glinting with gold letters spelling Sapphire Estates. Beyond it, not the honest sprawl of ranch land, but a garish display of luxury homes circling an artificial lake, a playground for millionaires masquerading as progress. He feels his stomach flip the way you do when the carnival ride drops without warning. A security guard strolls up, uniform pressed so sharp it looks painful, and with a smile as hollow as a televangelist's promise, tells him to turn around. Ethan doesn't flinch. He rolls down the window, voice cutting through the Texas air. "I'm Ethan Harper. This is my family's land." For a split second, the guard looks unsettled, then whispers into his radio as if Ethan is a ghost come back to haunt the place. Minutes later, Ethan is corralled into a glossy sales office perched exactly where his grandfather's barn once leaned in the wind. Marble floors replace hay dust, panoramic windows flaunt a $12 million lake system where spring-fed creeks once trickled quiet and free. His 9-year-old daughter, Sophie, tagging along for the weekend, presses her small hands against the glass, eyes wide. "Daddy, why are there so many big houses where Grandpa's cows used to be? And that lake, it's pretty, but it feels wrong." The words spear his chest. Try explaining to a child how heritage gets bulldozed in the name of profit. Enter Victor Kane, mid-40s, silver-templed, every thread of his suit screaming money. He strides in with a handshake too long and a laugh too practiced. "We've been expecting you, Mr. Harper. You sold us this land 18 months ago." "Fair deal. All documented." Ethan jerks back. He never sold. 18 months ago, he was knee-deep in drilling Mudbrook and paying child support. Yet on Victor's tablet sits a deed signature, nearly identical price, insultingly low, less than $1,000 an acre. The audacity makes him dizzy. As fury surges, Sophie pulls an old leather Bible from a donation box labeled Historical Items. The cover bears brass corners, yellowed pages, scribbled with births, deaths, and buried in the margins, notes on perpetual water rights from 1883. Victor's smooth face cracks for the briefest instant, eyes narrowing as if she has unearthed a live grenade. He tries to dismiss it as memorabilia, but Ethan tucks the Bible close. The air between them thickens like the humid stillness before a storm. Driving away that evening, Sophie clutching the book like treasure, Ethan sees Victor's silhouette framed in the sales office window, watching with the smile of a man who believes he has already won. But that night in a roadside motel, under the hum of a flickering light, Ethan pores over the fragile pages and finds the crack in Victor's empire. Perpetual rights to every drop of water on the ranch, and every shimmering gallon of Sapphire's lake depends on those springs. Historians still argue whether early Texas law favored land or water, but here the ink is clear. The lake may be theirs, but the water is his. The next morning he sits in Rachel Vega's office, the kind of modest law firm where the chairs squeak, But the mind behind the desk could slice steel. They were friends back in college. She chased real estate law while he chased oil rigs, and when she sees the forged deed, her jaw clenches like she's biting into lemon rind. Ethan, this isn't just shady, it's criminal. You were in West Texas the week this was notarized. Your rig logs prove it. She spreads papers across the desk like a blackjack dealer revealing a stacked hand. Sophie colors at the corner table but listens, eyes flicking up at every sharp phrase. Then Rachel taps the heart of it, the easement from 1883, granting Harper heirs perpetual rights to the springs. Texas law separates land from water, an odd quirk that scholars still debate, some arguing it was progressive, others calling it a loophole only ranchers benefited from. But one thing is certain without Harper water. Sapphire's million-dollar paradise is nothing but dried mud. Ethan feels a grin tug at him for the first time in weeks, the kind that comes when you realize Goliath just built his castle on quicksand. Victor senses the shift and retaliates hard. Online forums light up with slander. Deadbeat dad sabotages families. Harper terrorist draining lakes. Grainy photos of him on the property circulate with captions painting him unhinged. Tires slashed a brick through his apartment window. And worst of all, Sophie's school calls saying men in suits were asking about her schedule. The fear in her eyes when she tells him is enough to turn his blood to fire. Detective Sam Torres, a weathered cop with 30 years on the force and a love of burnt coffee, takes one look at the GPS tracker Ethan pulls from Sophie's backpack and mutters, "This isn't HOA nonsense anymore. This is federal." He warns Ethan about the danger, but Ethan shakes his head. Backing down would mean teaching his daughter that bullies win. Rachel moves fast. She files for an injunction to cut off water access citing the easement. Within days, the effect is visible from satellites. Docks high and dry, golf greens turning brown, expensive bass boats resting useless on cracked lake beds. Million-dollar homes that once bragged lakefront luxury now look like set pieces from a post-apocalyptic film. Panic spreads through Sapphire. HOA meetings turn into shouting matches. Residents blaming Victor for hiding the legal mess, some pointing fingers at Ethan as a vindictive saboteur. Local news cameras swarm the area, dubbing it the Battle of the Vanishing Lake. A quirky tidbit spreads online that fish from the shrinking lake were showing up in nearby cow ponds like nature itself was defecting sides. Victor doubles down, hiring private investigators to tail Ethan, slapping him with frivolous lawsuits and launching glossy PR campaigns. But none of it stops the lake from receding. One Friday night, as Ethan tucks Sophie in with the Bible on her nightstand, rocks clatter against his apartment windows. He rushes out with his phone recording, catching masked men scattering into the dark. Proof. Every drop of water that drains feels like a clock ticking down Victor's empire. And yet, even as the mud creeps further across Sapphire's manicured shores, Ethan senses something deeper stirring, because Rachel has unearthed whispers that Victor is only a middleman and bigger predators lurk in the shadows. The night Victor's caught on camera sneaking to the springs with hired muscle crowbars clanking under the moonlight, Ethan knows the tide has turned. Police flood the scene, red and blue strobes bouncing off the mudflats as Victor is hauled away in cuffs, ranting about how Ethan ruined him. The footage goes viral, silver-haired mogul shrieking by a drained lake, and the country can't look away. Stories spill out from other towns, families scammed, water, stolen land stripped bare. Sapphire Estates becomes a cautionary tale, a symbol of how greed can drown heritage. But in the dust of Victor's downfall, Sophie stumbles on something that chills Ethan more than any lawsuit. Digging through clippings at the local library, she finds an article from 1985 about a Harper family who vanished after refusing to sell. The girl in the photo could be Sophie's twin. "Daddy," she whispers, "it says families disappear over this land." That night, Ethan can't sleep. Rachel's deeper digging connects the dots. Victor wasn't the architect, just a pawn for Lonier Corp and its shadowy head, Maxwell Thorne. A billionaire obsessed with Confederate treasure myths, he has spent half a century buying up properties rumored to hide maps or caches of gold. 23 families lost, murdered, vanished, erased whenever they stood in his way. Historians still argue whether the Confederate gold legend is myth or misplaced fact, but to Thorne it has become religion. The climax unravels in a courthouse under siege. Thorne storms in with mercenaries, hostages trembling as cameras roll live. "Bring me the map or they die," he bellows, veins throbbing like snakes. Ethan walks forward, briefcase in hand, Sophie's Bible tucked inside. He reads aloud a forgotten letter from Sam Houston himself. The gold was a hoax, a smokescreen to hide something far more potent: spy lists, infiltration plans, documents worth more than treasure, because they rewrote the very fabric of Civil War history. Thorne crumbles in front of the nation, years of murder and bribery chasing ghosts. When FBI raids unravel Lonier's empire, Ethan discovers something real beneath the myths: gas rights worth $200 million untouched beneath the ranch soil. While pundits bicker on cable news about whether exposing Confederate spy networks was patriotic or reckless, Ethan restores the Harper legacy. 5 years later, Sophie blogs about conservation, Rachel lectures on property law, and their land becomes Harper State Park, a symbol of resilience. Victor post-prison shocks everyone by campaigning for victims of HOA corruption, controversial yet oddly redemptive. Thorne rots behind bars, secrets buried with him, while scholars tear apart the newly discovered Civil War intel, some arguing it reshapes history, others warning it destabilizes modern politics. The debate rages, but Ethan knows this much truth, once unearthed, can never be buried again. And as the ranch grass sways in the evening wind, Sophie, now 18, reminds him gently, "Daddy, we didn't just get our land back. We showed people you don't have to bow to bullies." He exhales slow and steady, feeling the weight of years lift like morning fog. The fight scarred him, reshaped him, but left him standing. And for the first time in a long while, he believes the land is safe. The story softens here, stretching into slower breaths, words like embers fading after a roaring fire. Picture the lake bed greening again, wild grasses reclaiming what bulldozers once erased, dragonflies tracing silver arcs over fresh water that now flows under public trust. The noise of lawsuits, the crackle of headlines, the sirens and shouts, they all fall quiet in the imagination, replaced by the low hum of cicadas at dusk. Sophie's laughter drifts across the porch of the rebuilt farmhouse, no longer tinged with fear, but with the unguarded ease of youth. Rachel visits often, her voice still quick and sharp, but softened when she tells Sophie that history isn't just in books, it's in the courage of families who refuse to fold. Ethan sits with them, gaze lingering on the horizon where fields meet sky, remembering the men who tried to take everything and the small leather Bible that turned the tide. Some truths will always divide people. Scholars will bicker, politicians will posture, neighbors will argue whether the past should be shielded or revealed. But under it all, the land remains steady, whispering back to those who listen. Tonight it whispers that one family's stand mattered, that one refusal to yield shook empires built on lies. And as the final image settles, the ranch bathed in fading light, cicadas singing, Sophie leaning her head on her father's shoulder, the tale closes, not with noise, but with calm, as if inviting the listener to breathe deeply, to believe for a moment that justice, however fragile, can take root and grow.